Zelda theories and Zelda lore can get a little dull sometimes. And no, I'm not saying it's boring at all, but sometimes we of the Zelda community can get so caught up with what this means for that person, or who made what relic, and what game comes where in the timeline, etc., that we forget sometimes just how enjoyable simply playing The Legend of Zelda is. And one of the reasons why this franchise is so loved and enjoyable to sit down and play is its jolly sense of humor. So in this video, I'm going to cover the 5 funniest characters across the entire series, and spoiler alert, this is all my opinion. I know, what a concept, but if you agree or disagree or have other characters that are funnier to you, let me know in the comments below. This list is only gonna have 5 or so entries, so chances are I'm gonna miss some fan favorites out there. Also, one last teeny tiny thing before we get into the list. On any given list covering the funniest or weirdest Zelda characters, there's a certain individual that is basically guaranteed to stand out above the rest by a good margin, and that would be none other than Ferryman himself, Tingle. Not only is Tingle a very weird, very funny looking, person, but he's the most weird and the most funny. And so I think he's more so on his own tier of weirdness and funniness, kind of a given, so he's not gonna be on this list. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to go over, so without further ado, bring on the funny. First up on the list, we have Nico from The Wind Waker. This tiny little man is a member of the dreaded pirate crew, known as Tetra's pirate crew. Calling him funny looking is kind of a given, because not only is he short, and I mean short, like shorter than Link, who is already just a child in this game, but he also kinda rocks this one tooth look. I mean, I'm sure he gets all the ladies with that pearly white tooth just sticking out there, but because this little guy is so little and helpless looking, he's always tasked with the laundry and cleaning and other menial tasks that none of the other superior pirates bother doing. Which is why he's so happy when Link decides to join up and temporarily become a pirate. He calls Link his new swabby and immediately rejoices that he's no longer at the bottom of the food chain. Poor little guy. In his first task for Link, he challenges the young hero to a jumping and swinging game that he's apparently come up with while being alone down here, thinking there's no way Link could complete it so quickly, which of course he does, but the funniest part about this little game is when he's showing Link how to do it. I mean, yes, it does seem like it would be kind of challenging in real life, but just listen to Nico try to jump. I mean, he's just trying so hard. Oh man. Later on in the game, slight spoiler warning here by the way, after Link leaves the pirates and tries to sneak on their ship on Windfall Island at nightfall, guess who got left behind in the ship while all the other pirates got to spend one night celebrating on shore? Yup. Poor little Nico, who is back inevitably at the bottom of the food chain. He has another harder swinging challenge for you, which of course you beat and he rewards you for, but these few interactions with the great Nico have proven to be some of the most funny and memorable across the whole franchise. Next up, we have the one and only masterful traveling salesman himself, Beedle. Well, saying the one and only feels kind of weird since he's present in Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and other games, so even though all Beedles are hilarious, I'm specifically referring to the one from Skyward Sword. This absolute legend of a man can be found flying over Skyloft. Yes, flying. His shop is flying. You have to ring a bell for him to drop a rope for Link to grab onto and be pulled up to see Beedle and his wares. And then it's revealed to you exactly what is powering Beedle's flying shop. That would be Beedle himself, pedaling infinitely, all day long. I mean, don't get me wrong, of course I'm jealous of all his gains and those toned legs and rock hard abs, but when you ask him why he's pedaling, he explains that he's being eco-friendly. Eco-friendly. You know what's more eco-friendly than a flying shop? A regular one, sitting on the ground. This is also the most terrifying iteration of Beedle, because if you make the mistake of perusing his items for sale, but then leaving with no intention of buying anything, oh, he takes that personally. Because you see, since he's such a noble, eco-friendly soul, pedaling all day to keep his little air shop in the air, when a customer boards said shop, it increases the weight and Beedle ends up having to pedal even harder. harder. And when said customer, namely Link, decides to leave without even buying anything, Beedle decides to literally drop them out of his airship with a little trapdoor he installed just for that reason. And when he does, he looks at you with this little smile like he gets some joy from ejecting you downwards towards the ground. This may even be worse than the Luigi death stare from Mario Kart. Does this count as murderous intent? I mean, he has no way of knowing whether you're going to survive the fall. But either way, his weird and somewhat terrifying presence in Skyward Sword makes for funny character number 4 on my list. Number 3 brings us to a very familiar face for some and a complete stranger for others. Princess Ruto of Ocarina of Time. Sure, she eventually becomes a sage, which is closer to being boring than funny, but when she and Link are both children is what I'm talking about. For most people, having to deal with her throughout Jabu Jabu's belly is rather annoying, but looking back at it, it's actually pretty funny. I mean, here you have a little princess girl who is such a brat that she simply refuses to walk on her own and demands that Link carry her around on his head. I mean, which ends up making the dungeon possible, but still, this girl is crazy. She also flat out blatantly lies and says she did not write the letter in a bottle that Link found in Lake Hylia, which was signed Princess Ruto. And after young Link and the princess clear the dungeon, well, I suppose she develops a bit of a crush on the youthful hero, and this ensues. Just look at her face swimming up to Link. Got one thing on the mind? She then tricks him into getting engaged by giving him the Zora's Sapphire, which she calls the Zora's engagement ring. I mean, these kids are what, 9, 10 years old? Already engaged? Dang, that's some serious A-game right there. But Link, bless his heart, is pretty clueless as to what she means by all of this. There isn't really any evidence to show that the two ever ended up together, especially if you believe in the sages are dead theory, but looking back on her entire encounter, she's pretty clearly a very funny part of Ocarina of Time. Number 2 brings us to Kakariko Village of Twilight Princess. Meet Barnes, the bomb shop owner. Barnes is probably the most cowardly character in the entire game and has plenty of screen time and cutscenes to show off that funny little characteristic of his. But aside from his undying love of self-protection and his goggle glasses, belly shirt, high-heeled boots, and welding mask that he never takes off, this guy runs a bomb shop by himself that has both a buying and returning counter as 2 separate counters. But how does he accomplish this if he's the only employee of Barnes' bomb shop? By literally running back and forth between the two and, get this, pretending to be 2 different people instead of just, I don't know, processing both kinds of transactions at the same counter? What is it with the Zelda franchise and quirky salespeople? Is there a normal salesperson in any of the games? You can't help but like Barnes though, because even though he's a cowardly, strange-looking single dude, he helps to alleviate the darker theme of the game by giving players plenty of physical humor. Before we get to the final funny character, I have a couple honorable mentions to, mention. Groose from Skyward Sword is a pretty funny character who rapidly became a fan favorite once the game released. He's in constant competition with Link over the affections of the fair Zelda, and even follows Link to the surface, landing on him in the process. They both survived though, so, no harm done. In Breath of the Wild, Bolson's confetti throwing at the marriage of his employee Hudson always makes me laugh too. That and his outfit. Anyway, of course there are more funny characters scattered throughout the games, but that's all the mentions I'll give in this video. The final funniest character from the Legend of Zelda series takes us back again to the Wind Waker. At 2 different times in the game, you'll run into not a shop owner, but a man who runs mini games while absolutely hating his job. Meet Salvatore, the unexpectedly successful yet extremely depressed entrepreneur. This guy is a one-man team that runs all aspects of the games he's created, from sound effects to gameplay. The thing is, what he really wants to do is become a famous painter, which so far isn't faring out for him so well. So the poor guy came up with his current hugely successful business plan of creating fun minigames and is completely bored of it all, leading to one of the funniest characters ever made. The games he created include different characters and storylines, all of which he demonstrates by himself. He puts on different masks and will alter his voice to become the other characters in his games, even characters of the opposite gender like Tetra, and even makes his own sound effects like this one. It's amazing. You know, part of me wishes I could just sit down and come up with as successful a business as he did. But who knows, maybe I'd just end up depressed like him. He ultimately doesn't matter much to the story of Wind Waker, but is a necessary encounter for those who like to get all heart containers and treasure maps, for instance. But when you run across him, you're sure to never forget the sploosh. And that wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments who your funniest character is, or if you agree with my list, and if you want to see more videos like this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already for much more juicy Zelda content to come. As always, huge thank you to my faithful patrons, including the newest member, Kill Lilith. I think I pronounced that correctly. If you're interested in a shout out and your name at the end of all my videos, check out the link in the description below. Also down there are links to my Twitter and Discord, so feel free to connect with me there if you'd like. That's all I've got for you. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. And hey, Happy New Year. Peace!